There are homes where silence feels soft, gentle, harmless. And there are homes where silence is heavy, thick, something you feel pressing against your chest. This was one of those homes. Nothing looked broken on the outside. No shattered plates, no yelling, no dramatic fights echoing down the hallway. Everything looked normal, even calm. But there was a kind of quiet that did not soothe. It stung. The refrigerator hummed steadily. A spoon clicked against the side of a mug. Footsteps moved slowly across the floor, as if the house were fragile, as if any sound might set something off. And on the living room couch, there was a dent shaped by the weight of a man who had been sleeping there for far too long. His name was Marcos. Each morning, he folded his blanket with precise care, smoothing each corner, aligning the fabric, as if neatness could give him control over the parts of his life that no longer felt steady. Down the hallway, Aileen moved with a controlled kind of grace, her back straight, her jaw set. Her silence was not calm, it was armor, the kind of armor worn by someone who has learned that if you show your pain first, you lose. And drifting gently between them was Laura, 8 years old. She walked as if her feet barely touched the ground. She watched the house the way some children watch the weather, always noticing the shifts, always preparing for the storm that might come. Marcos said quietly, "Good morning." Aileen did not look at him. She answered, "Is it?" That was all. But it was everything. The unraveling of their home had not begun with one big fight. It had happened slowly, in sighs, in hesitations, in questions that came out sharper than they were meant to, in answers that came out colder than they should have. He believed that staying calm was the way to keep the peace. She believed that if she didn't push, if she didn't demand connection, everything she loved might slip through her hands. But calm can feel like distance to someone who fears being abandoned, and intensity can feel like attack to someone who fears being overwhelmed. So they circled each other in misunderstanding, one stepping back when overwhelmed, the other stepping forward, afraid of being left. And eventually, the bed no longer belonged to both of them. Marcos moved to the couch. At first, just for one night, to cool down, to reset, to avoid saying something he couldn't take back. But one night turned into several, then weeks. The couch became a country of exile, a place where he could exist without causing harm, or so he thought. Late at night, he would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to organize his thoughts like files in his mind. He searched for solutions, explanations, reasons. He read articles about communication and emotional compatibility. He tried to think his way out of pain. Meanwhile, in the bedroom, Aileen sat awake in the quiet dark. Her emotions were deep and sharp, difficult to carry alone. She wished he would come back. But she did not call out for him. calling out felt like surrender, like asking to be hurt. Two people hurting, both waiting for the other to speak first, both believing they were the one holding the family together.
He couldn't answer. His throat tightened. His chest ached. The silence that followed did not protect him. It broke him. The moment that changed everything came quietly, on an ordinary Wednesday, with the smell of laundry in the air and dishes drying in the rack. Marcos was washing a plate when small arms wrapped tightly around his waist from behind. He felt her tears before he heard them. "Daddy, please come back to the bedroom." He turned, kneeling so their faces met. Laura's tears made small dark circles on his shirt where her face rested. He held her. Not with caution, not with hesitation, but with the kind of embrace that says, "I didn't realize how much you were carrying for us." "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm sorry I left you in the middle of this." It was the first truth spoken aloud in a long time. That night, Marcos knocked on the bedroom door, not as a guest, not as someone intruding, but as someone who had decided to return. Aline opened the door, her eyes tired, her posture less rigid than before. He spoke without defenses. "When things get overwhelming, I shut down. I thought pulling away was the safest thing I could do, but I see now that leaving you alone with your fear only made everything worse." Fear had been running their home. Not anger, not pride, just fear. Naming it softened something in both of them. They did not solve everything that night, but the wall between them shifted. A small crack opened, enough for light to enter. The next morning, Laura placed a glass jar filled with water and glitter on the kitchen table. "When someone gets upset," she said, "you shake the jar, and nobody talks until the glitter settles." It was such a simple thing. But sometimes healing begins in the smallest act of grace. So they used the jar, not to avoid conflict, but to slow down long enough to remember they were on the same side. Arguments no longer erupted. They passed like brief storms, followed by clearing skies. And slowly, almost gently, Marcos returned to the bed. The first night back was awkward. The air felt unfamiliar. But they stayed, side by side. Not perfectly, but willingly.
Some families are saved by grand gestures. This one was saved by a hug in a kitchen, a jar of glitter, and the choice to speak the truth, even when the truth shook in their voices. They were never broken. They were simply learning how to love without fear.
Some families are saved by grand gestures. This one was saved by a hug in the kitchen, a jar of glitter, and the choice to speak the truth, even when the truth shook in their voices. They were never broken. They were simply learning how to love without fear.